afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Sports Wave Network and Sports Corner with the Conn Man. I am your host, the Conn Man. And with me this afternoon, I have with me a very, very special guest. He goes by the name of Zach LeMay. Zach, how are you doing, my brother?
I'm doing good, Conn Man. Thanks for having me on. Long time no see.
You know, folks, before we get into Zach, because I want to give him his flowers. Back in the day, when I was trying to navigate towards this podcast world, I was trying to put myself out there and try to promote myself as a basketball historian, which I am, by the way. And, I was looking through different avenues and venues, and I came across Not in My House. And I think I pursued you guys and damn near stalked you guys to get on your show. And then you gave me the opportunity and it worked out great. And then you even invited me back again. Zach, I don't know how to thank you and your partner for allowing me or giving me the opportunity to come on your show. It kind of springboarded me into doing what I'm doing now. And I owe you guys a debt of gratitude for taking a chance on me. You didn't know me from a hole in the wall. And I just want to give you all flowers for that. Before we go into you, what made you decide to have me on your show?
Well, first of all, thanks for the kind words. And the way to thank us is by having me on. This is an honor, and seeing what you've done with your platform is incredible. So kudos to you. You've done an incredible job with your guests. So, I guess what got us started in it, I don't know really how to answer that other than starting from a little bit of my basketball background, because I think it kind of makes sense with, how the podcast got started. But, as far as having you on the show, you consider yourself a historian. I consider myself a student, and I'm never done learning. And even, I'm coaching today, and I'm never done learning. And I mean, the day I stop learning is the day I got to stop coaching, right? So
Correct.
To be learning from, somebody with your knowledge and, kind of reading more about your background and all the research that you did on all the players from, your area was something that really sparked my interest. And I thought that we could learn a lot about the game from you and all the stories that you had with Dr. J and, Tiny Archibald. I mean, That's kind of the whole point of our podcast, is by learning something new and kind of celebrating the players that really built this game into something special. And you had such a great knowledge of that's really why we wanted to have you on. And it was a treat, man. That's why we had you twice. So.
Zach, it was great being on your show as well. Now, Zach, because I'm here to give you your flowers, can you let the viewers know where it all began, how it all started, from the get-go, from the beginning?
Yeah, do you mean the podcast or just like my basketball journey, or what exactly?
Everything.
Okay.
From the beginning, from you getting it.
Okay, yeah.
Your interest in basketball and how it led up to where you are at now.
Yeah, because I think my interest in basketball, my journey, is kind of what got us into the podcast, and I think it all makes sense to you, especially since you're a follower of our show. But like I said, I've always been a student of the game, and that started very early. My dad was somebody who really wanted me to watch basketball from the past before I really started watching basketball in the present, and the reason for that is I remember when I was like 6 or 7, I'm dating myself, but I saw Alonzo Mourning on the TV screen, and I pointed at the screen. I was like, "Hey, Dad, who's that?" And he said, "That's Alonzo Mourning." And I said, "Oh, well, that's my favorite player," without ever really watching basketball or anything, And he just turned the TV off. He's like, "No." He's like, "You need to learn about the players who came before you make statements like that," And so I remember he bought me all these videos and this book of like the top 100 best players. And, I started reading about guys like Billy Cunningham, John Havlicek, Bill Russell. And I was just so fascinated with like the history and like why these guys are ranked, 1 through 100, what made them great. And so like at a very early age, I started watching film. I started watching old games. I started reading about these guys. And then I'm sure, when you're a kid, you're in the driveway counting down from 10 to 1 and shooting at the buzzer, right? I think all of us did that. Well, I was doing that too, but I was almost simulating a 5-on-5 game in my head. I would throw a no-look pass off the wall like Maravich and catch it like Lou Hudson and shoot his mid-range jump shot, or like try to do George Gervin's finger roll. And, I was so fascinated with like how difficult these moves were and why they're so great at them and how they became great at them, that I was just a student very early on. So, as you kind of get older, it's not as, it's kind of, kind of look like a weirdo when you're doing that when you're 25, 30 years old, so I had to find a way to kind of, how do I bring that inner child out in me as an adult? Like, how do I start learning about these guys and studying these guys as an adult? And, I met Eric, who's not here today, but my co-host, and I met him playing morning basketball. And, he said, "Hey, you know a lot about basketball, we should do a podcast." And I was like, "What the hell is a podcast? I don't even know what that is." I was like, "What?" Because this is right before the pandemic, before podcasts were really popular, and he kind of explained it to me, and I still had no idea what he's talking about. But I went and I bought all these microphones and things like that, bought all the equipment. And the very next day I called him. I'm like, "Hey, I bought some equipment. You want to do the podcast?" And he just kind of looked at me like, "You're crazy. Like, I didn't think you'd actually do it," and it kind of turned into us just talking about it, because I kept telling him I could probably get a couple guys that played in the G League or, coached. And I think he kind of just was like, "Ah, whatever, like I'm blowing smoke." But all of a sudden, Rod Benson turned into Rex Walters. Rex Walters turned into, Chris Herron. Chris Herron turns into Oscar Schmidt. Oscar Schmidt turns into Sidney Moncrief. And all of a sudden we start getting all these great guests such as yourself. And it's been a beautiful thing to be able to learn about these guys, their journey, their grind. And on top of that, it's just been a great thing to build connections. I've got some of these guests that you've had, like, Dana Smith and Paul McKeskey and Ashley Orndorff doing clinics with our kids, which has been a game changer for my basketball program. So it's even beyond the podcasting. It's really done a lot of great for the kids, the team I coach, and our community. So,
too, Zach, I got to give you a big shout out for, you hit me up. You said, "Mike, maybe you should have Ash Orndorff on your show." And I'm like, "Okay." And what a phenomenal guest she was.
Amazing.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I thank you for that as well. Now, let the viewers know, because you and Eric do a different type of podcast. So let the viewers know what type of podcast you do.
Yeah, it's like I said, we kind of really just like to learn about the journey and the grind of these players and celebrate how great they were. And one thing as a student of the game is I just feel like there's so many great players from the past that get forgotten, that maybe a lot of current kids really don't know about but should know about, or people that never really did get their flowers, And a good example of that is, I'm sure you know who he is, but Shea Cotton, one of the greatest high school basketball players to ever touch a ball, and his name kind of gets forgotten. And having Shea on the show was so educational, just because I think that there's a lot of young athletes that think making it to the NBA is easy, or making it to college is easy. And I mean, the reality is things kind of have to work perfectly and have a lot of luck to get there. You could be as talented or as physically gifted as a Shea Cotton, and for whatever reason, it just doesn't work out, or Esteban Weaver was another. A lot of people don't know who Esteban Weaver is, but those are just kind of the high school names that never quite made it. But then when you talk about like maybe an Oscar Schmidt, I mean, he's the game of basketball's all-time leading scorer. Everyone thinks it's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but it's Oscar Schmidt. And that's somebody who we wanted our young listeners to learn about. And even the guys like Dino Raja, I mean, he was on a team that really kind of made the dream team form, really made Olympic basketball competitive. And I mean, the list goes on. I mean, we've had Chris Herron, who I know is near and dear to your heart in your area, who we just feel, his, drug addiction, but also everything that he's done after to bounce back and give back to his community and raise awareness. I mean, those are the stories that we really want to hear, because, one of the things I preach as a coach is don't don't let basketball use you, use basketball. And I think that's kind of what these journeys kind of highlight, because it's beyond the basketball. It's how they got there and what they're doing after, and how they use basketball to better themselves, better the community, and better other people. So that's really what we're about, is just getting people's stories out there. No hot takes, no opinions. We just want to learn about, what makes these people so great, how they got there, and how, younger athletes can maybe apply some of those lessons to their everyday life.
And something, Zach, what you and Eric do is the fact that, I'm old school, and you have some of the old time players, or players who have played in the past, who, again, we don't want people to forget, or we want people to learn about and know about. It's kind of what I do as well. And, kudos to you and Eric for doing that. And it inspires me, because it's the way the NBA landscape is now. We'll talk about that maybe a little bit later on. A lot of people forget all the great players that came before them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you and Eric and I and a few others, want their memories and the legendary athleticism that they had keep going on and moving on. And now you mentioned some great ball players. Folks, Shea Carton was an unbelievable basketball player. Had I guess he was projected to be damn near another Kobe. And, things happen. And like you said, you never know. The NBA is it's a very tough life. But now let's get back to you again, because I'm going to give you your flowers. So you and I get together, you decide to have a podcast. What made you think, or what did you do to go about getting guests? And how did you decide who you wanted to get?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Because like I said, I had a couple connections, not a lot. Like, I had a couple buddies that I played basketball with in the past, AAU, who went on to play in the NBA or G League or whatever. And I was kind of targeting them and hoping I could get some referrals or whatever, and just kind of try to connect the dots. And what's funny is that I didn't even get some of those friends on the show. They were still kind of in their careers and didn't really want to do it. And, we really had zero credibility. Like, we didn't have anybody. So they just weren't really sure what they're jumping into. So, what we did was, we got a couple beat writers. Like, we had the Portland Trailblazers beat writer, Dwight James, and then it ended up getting a former Reno Bighorns player, Rod Benson. And then those interviews went pretty well. And then we ended up getting a guy like a Rex Walters, which gave us some real good credibility right there. And so after a while, it was just kind of connecting the dots, going to these, maybe finding them on Instagram or Facebook. And I would write, these pretty heartfelt messages like, hey, like, I used to emulate you in the driveway. Like, I loved your game. I appreciated this about your career, both on and off the court. And I think that they could feel that we were genuine and really wanted to learn about them, and not just, try to get these hot takey stories. And, the basketball world's a pretty beautiful, connected world if you approach it the right way. I think they're very willing to share. And so just kind of sending out those heartfelt messages, I think they could tell we were genuine. And once those interviews went well, they said, hey, this one, I might know a guy that you might like to have. And then the way that I targeted athletes again was, I wanted to give these guys a platform. I wanted to give them a voice of, because some of their careers maybe just weren't as appreciated as they should be, like a Shea Cotton, like I said. Or another example, like a Jackie Stiles. Like, she was, the NCAA's all-time leading scorer for women for a very long time, and everyone talks about Caitlin Clark. I'm like, before Caitlin Clark, there was Jackie Stiles. So those are just kind of the people that I wanted to target, was the ones that were really incredible and kind of paved the way for the players today, because I just don't think we talk about them enough. And, a couple other ones, I guess would be like a Scoop Jackson. I mean, we had Scoop Jackson on the show, who's I mean, it really kind of, in my opinion, changed the platform of, basketball journalism with Slam Magazine and, Chicago Legend,
Yes,
and
yes.
so, I mean, we're kind of also beyond the basketball players. We try to get like the writers or the coaches, or another good example would be William Gates from Hoop Dreams, probably the
Ooh.
most,
Mhm.
yeah, William Gates. I mean, that documentary was so important to the basketball world, and to kind of hear his story and hear his experience through that whole process, through that documentary and his basketball journey, like I just think those stories, I mean, they're so valuable and irreplaceable, and I think it's important for everybody to kind of know about these things, because we see the stats, we see the highlights, but like I feel like you need to hear and understand the journey of how they got there, and that's really what we wanted to do was A, celebrate players who maybe don't get that recognition, but B, hear about the grind, hear about their journey, about how they got there, because like you said, it's not always an easy pathway for these guys.
And you and Eric, I mean, I mean, you guys, I'm so impressed with what you guys are doing. And you had so many great guests on your show. And I always, promote your show because what you're doing is a representation of what should be done. We can't forget about the people who came before us. And you and Eric do a great job. And I'm want to give you and Eric your kudos for what you do and for giving me the platform to be on your show as well. And I want to talk about if you would let me let you talk about when you get your guests. I notice you do your homework. You guys do your homework very, very well. I noticed that. Can you explain to the viewers about how you do your homework on the potential guests that you have on your show?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, it's like I said, growing up as a kid, you read about these guys, you watch, film on these guys, and I've always kind of had a pretty good knowledge and understanding of their careers,
Hmm.
and so, but you still always want to find out more. Like for me, like I want to
Hmm.
know why maybe George Gervin had developed that finger roll. I want to know why Ben Gordon, who's one of our guests, was able to develop that floater and how he developed that floater. So, we kind of just try to get into the skeletons of everything. We don't just want to ask like the typical questions that they
Right.
always get asked. Like we kind of want to dive into what made them great, or what was different about their practice habits, what was different about their experience of getting traded, things like that. So as far as the homework, like we research them a little bit. We might watch a documentary, read a book that they have that they came out with, so that we can really get deep into questions that maybe they don't always get asked, and we always like to throw a couple curveballs, to break the ice, so they can tell some funny stories, things like that. But the most important thing is we want to make them comfortable, make them want to, share some of those fun, obscure stories, because that's really where you learn about who they are and what they do, is when you can kind of dive into those topics where maybe, they're not being asked all the time. So, but yeah, I think you just have to have a genuine interest in the guest. I don't think you can just. I mean, if I just go and try to get a Damian Lillard or a Giannis Antetokounmpo, one, we're probably not going to get him, right? But B, like, you know, I want to go for the interesting guest. Like, I want to know why Ricky, like, how great Ricky Sobers was, or I want to know how great
Oh,
Ricky
okay.
Pierce was, like, because we had Ricky
Hmm.
Pierce, like, how is he able to accept a bench role and be so great and thrive at it? Like, those are the questions that we want to ask.
And something too, what I admire about you and Eric and what you guys do is because the guests you have, like a Ricky Pierce and the guests you just named, that was back in the early NBA or earlier NBA days, 70s, 80s. And what they had to go through, where the NBA right now, you got people making $50 million and time management, load management, and all this BS. But the players you asked, I mean, they really went through that grind and through that journey. And I think it's so important that, what you do and what I try to do is to try to, let viewers know so many people paved the way for those who have what they have right now. And, I'm going to tell you something real quick is, I claim that I was a historian, and I do believe I know my history, and I have no problem sitting down with anybody and talking history of the game. I'm that confident in myself. But I'll tell you one guest that I had, and he made me realize you can read a book, you can watch a movie, but until you actually experience it, and nothing like it. And I'm going to tell you who that guest was. He was
Sam
the great
Jones,
Sam
wasn't
Jones.
it? Yep.
Yes. And, I had the pleasure having him on my show 3 months prior to his death. And he told me so many things that, again, every time I bring his name up, I get teary eyed because of what he had to go through for not just him, but in general. And that's why I respect you and Eric and what you guys do, and for giving me the opportunity to be on your show as well. Now, okay, name some of the top guests you've ever had, because the viewers probably don't know about you, but they're gonna know about you tonight. Best believe that.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, I can't just pick one. I mean, I honestly, I love all the guests we get, and for different reasons, and I mean, if you want to, I mean, when you really dive deep into it, like basketball is an art, right? And like I think basketball out of most sports is probably the most artistic one. Like every single one of these players are given a canvas and they painted something beautiful on it, right? And so like it's
Mm-hmm.
impossible for me to say, oh man, this is our best guest. But I mean, just to name some of those guests, I mean, we've had Hall of Famers like Sidney Moncrief, Oscar Schmidt, like I said, Dino Raja, Jackie Stiles, Chris Herron, the Van Arsdale twins, who those are one of my favorite ones because those were some of my dad's favorite players. And then when you talk about the ABA, Bob Nedelicki. Then we've had Swen Nader, Len Elmore, a big who's been a big part of basketball, and then Charlie Ward, who's the only guy to win a Heisman and play in the NBA, and then Gene Banks, one of my favorites, because when you think Duke, when you think Duke basketball, I guarantee you everybody says Leitner, Bobby Hurley, but I mean it's Gene Banks that really kind of started that, Duke tradition, and then William Gates from Hoop Dreams. But I mean, one of my favorites, honestly, is one of your former guests too, and it's Ash Orndorff. And I don't.
Oh yes.
I mean, nobody's gonna really know that name, but that was one of the most emotional and just most meaningful interviews to me, being a women's basketball coach. I think that's one of our most important episodes that we've done. And I just, I love her to death. She's a great human. And, the list goes on. I mean, Chris Anstey, I mean, he's a god over in Australia for basketball. And Daryl McDonald, Earl Boykins, Marcus Liberty. I mean, the list goes on. I can't pick just one. Ricky Sobers. I mean, I love them all. I mean, every single one of our guests brings something different. Or one of my heroes, Walt Williams, the Wizard. So. We've been blessed.
Absolutely.
So we've been blessed.
You and I can relate. A lot of people probably can't relate because they're probably too young to recognize some of the names that you've been throwing out there. I'm gonna throw one out there to you. Now, another one who had a very promising career, and when I first tried to get him on my show, I didn't believe it was really him. I don't know if you experienced that, but anyway, he did finally come on my show, and I really didn't go into detail about his story, but that was Ronnie Fields. I think that
him too.
I know you did. And his story is absolutely unbelievable. The talent that he had, and he came on the show and he talked about it was him and Kobe, and McDonald's All-Star game, which he couldn't participate in because he was injured, and other things he had to say about where he could have been or what could have been. And I like to bring them kind of stories out as well, because not everything is, glory, glory. Sometimes we gotta find on having guests like that can, maybe hopefully make people aware that, anything can happen on spur of a moment and things of that nature. Now,
Yeah,
again,
and really quick, I
I
want
want
to
to thank.
touch on Ronnie Fields, if you don't mind, because
Go
one of the
ahead.
one of the most incredible things about Ronnie Fields that is such an underrated talent is the control that he had in the air. Like, I mean, yes, the dunks were incredible, and yes, he was explosive, but the control and the grace that he had in the air, to me, was just something that was so beyond impressive. And it's a shame that we never really got to see what he could have been in college and in the NBA, because what him and Kevin Garnett were doing in Chicago was just absolutely incredible. But such a great guy. Loved having him on. And I mean, I was so excited when you had him on too, because I knew that was going to be a great interview, which was one of my favorite ones that you've done, by the way. So that was a great one.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It was great because, as I stated before, people say, oh, he played with Kevin Garnett. No, I said Kevin Garnett played with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a little difference.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? You know what I mean. But, so let me ask you this, since I got you on, I'm giving you your flowers. What are the pros and the cons of doing a podcast? And your podcast is so well known, and I think it's one of the best in the country. And I want you to explain to the viewers what was the pros and cons for someone who might want to go and delve into the world of podcasting.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate the kind words. That's high praise, and that means the world to us. So thank you for that. But I mean, the pros to doing a podcast are the connections and the friendships that you build through it. Honestly, like, I mean, we haven't made a dime off doing the podcast. We don't do commercials. We don't do
Exactly.
sponsors. We don't do anything like that. And we've had our opportunities
Mhm.
too. That's just not what I do it for. I think it takes away from our show to have ads, or to have sponsors. Like, that's
Correct.
not what we want. And so I think the pros have been the connections I've had. Like I said, I've been able to get, because we had Zach Marbury on the show. I got Zach Marbury to work with our girls. We had Marcus Banks, who has done skills clinics with our girls, and Ash Orndorff and Paul McKeskey, thanks to Dana Smith, one of your former guests, to do clinics with our girls. So, like, some of the connections and the friendships I've been able to build through this podcast, I mean, that's honestly the biggest reward. And also just the information I've been able to learn to apply to my coaching. Like, I've learned so many incredible, just little things. Like, I always learn one or two really little but really important things from each guest that I've been able to apply to my coaching. So, like, for me, that's been a huge thing. But some of the, cons, some of the negatives, maybe, you're starting to see everybody starting to do a podcast, and a lot of them are former
Mhm.
players now. Like, there's a lot of former players doing them now. And so I think it's getting more difficult, because everybody's getting asked to do it. And every podcast is starting to get, I shouldn't say similar, like, every show is unique and beautiful in their own way, but I think that there's a lot of people out there that maybe do the podcast for the wrong reasons. And so a lot of guests are maybe quick to say no, just because they think that you're like a lot of some of these other podcasts are maybe a little bit more hot takey or negative. And, I think that's probably just one of the cons, is that there's so much competition out there now, and so much, I'll say it, negative hot take shows out there, that it kind of puts a bad name on podcasts, when really there's a lot of great podcasts like the ones you do, and what we try to do. So I think that would be some of the cons, is just the competition and how many podcasts there actually are out there now.
Now, I want to delve into what you're doing now. You said you are a coach. Who do you coach? Why do you coach? Get into your coach, because I know you are definitely involved in that. So I want the viewers to know about your coaching experimentation, how it started you coaching, and where it's led to you right now.
Oh man, that's a loaded question. I don't know how deep into it you want me to go, but
Hey, this is your flowers, Zach. I'm giving you your flowers. Go ahead.
All right. Well, yeah, I do coach. I'm a women's basketball coach at North Valleys High School in Reno, Nevada. I wasn't always a women's coach though. I started coaching boys, JV, and freshmen here in Reno at another school um, when I was done playing. I just finished my college career and was kind of looking for some sort of direction to stay involved in basketball. And what happened was I applied to my former school that I played at to try to coach. I didn't get the job, but what happened was they're so impressed, with my resume, I guess, that they asked me to coach JV and help out with the new varsity coach. And I said, okay, and so I coached freshmen and JV boys for a while. And, I loved it. Like I love the kids, but I will say as a freshman or a JV coach, it's difficult because you have to, depending on who your varsity coach is, and I love him to death. He gave me a start, but a lot of times you have to run an offense that varsity runs, or maybe they bring players down and it's almost kind of ran like a G League in a way. You're kind of maybe preaching some of the things that you don't necessarily agree with, or running an offense that you necessarily wouldn't run, and it's difficult, and um, so I didn't really like the JV freshman levels too much. And after about 3 or 4 years, I thought I was done.
Uh-huh.
I was like, I don't know if I'm going to coach again. And then the pandemic hit, and so everyone was going crazy during the pandemic, right? And so I got a call during the pandemic from North Valleys High School, and it was the boys varsity coach at the time, and he said, "Hey, do you want to coach?" And I said, "Not really," you know. And he's like, "Well, I
Mm-hmm.
really need some help with the JV boys." And a light bulb clicked. I was like, "Do I get a key to the gym?" And so he said, "Yeah, you'll get a key to the gym." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll do it I'm only doing it for a year though," And so um, I'm kind of ashamed to say it, but I kind of agreed for the wrong reason to get a key to the gym. And what happened was about a week later, they told me like, "Hey, the girls' varsity job just opened up. Do you want to apply?" And I said, "Sure." Like I have to go get the key anyway. Like I might as well apply. Like we'll see what happens. Didn't think I was
Mm-hmm.
going to get the job because I'd applied in the past. I had applied to I think 15 different schools, and they all told me no. And went in that interview and walked out as the head women's coach of North Valleys High School. And what's interesting about it is that program was at rock bottom. They were one of the worst teams in the state. They had been bad for 10 plus years, and everybody laughed at me when I said that I got hired there. And they said, "You're never going to get the commitment. You're never going to get the basketball players. You're never going to get the support." They're like, "If you're trying to get out of coaching, you're going to the right spot." I kind of heard it
Wow.
all. And so I mean, it was challenging, and I knew that we had to get some really good basketball minds on staff if we were going to compete. And so I'm sure you know the name, the legendary coach Pete Newell. I got his grandson to help me out, who's also named Pete Newell,
Wow.
and a couple other great coaches. And year one was hard. We only won like 5 or 7 games or something. And we approached that off season like we told them, like, "Hey, like if you give us a full off season, you're going to see results. Like we'll teach you the fundamentals. Like we're going to be competitive." And it's probably one of my favorite stories because that following year we had the biggest turnaround in Northern Nevada history. We won 21 games, won
Wow.
our league
Mm.
league champions, and is with really essentially the same exact roster. So it was really special and rewarding to see these girls put their heart
Wow.
and soul into an off season, go win 20 games. And I'm going on year 4 now. We won 3 straight league titles, 3 straight 20 plus win seasons.
Wow.
We're competing for state this year. And what's interesting, and you're going to love this, I think you'll love this, is we had a very legitimate chance to win a state championship this year, and we all knew it. We were ranked as high as top 5 in the state at one point. And
Mm.
we lost the game to go to the state tournament. And seeing the disappointment on all the girls' faces as we left the locker room, it obviously was the worst feeling in the world as a coach, right? But
Right.
I went down to Vegas to watch the state games that weekend anyway, just to learn and see what we did wrong or where we were at as a program. And it almost hurt worse because I felt we were better or just as good as those teams and had could have won
Hmm.
it. And I had so many people in Vegas come up to me and say how much fun the girls were to watch and how great of a season we had. And it was kind of in that moment where I realized that I was most appreciative of, out of all the feelings we went through as a team, the pain, the happiness, the joy, to the pain, the loss, and the heartbreak, I was most appreciative of the pain and the heartbreak. And the reason for that is when I first took over the program, we were in 0 meaningful games, like 0. There was not a game that was meaningful. We didn't know that feeling. And it was in that moment where I realized, like, we're finally at a point as a program where we were in a meaningful game that, where we were able to feel that pain and heartbreak. So just kind of, it made me remember where we started and where we came from. And it just made me so proud of, what the girls have built, that we're now in a position to be in a meaningful game, and so what they built this program into is so amazing. And I mean, they're my superheroes, man. I love those girls.
And congratulations to you and your team as well. Do you feel that in today's game, whether it be boys or girls, men, women, what do you think are the biggest challenges they have to face dealing with the social media, dealing with if they're seniors, NIL, AAU, things of that nature? What is your? I want some Zach. I want to get your opinion because I always ask my guests who have some type of interest or some type of uh, knowledge. What is your take on the AAU itself, and what is your take on the NIL, and how does that affect you in your program? Maybe I don't know if you actually recruit players to come play at your high school. How does that work? How does that world develop? Because I'm from the old school, I know on off. So how's that world develop right now?
So really quick for our high school, we don't recruit. I've never recruited a player, and that's just not really a thing in Northern Nevada. However, it's probably going to be a thing soon, just with some of the changes. And what I'm noticing just with social media and NIL and AAU and all these things is,
Mm,
it's so much different than when I played, because when I played, there really wasn't social media. Like there was no Instagram. Like we had MySpace. That doesn't count, so it was, I'm used to Street and Smith. So I was reading about these guys,
oh
like
yeah, oh yeah. People don't know about that. They don't know about that.
yeah, I'm kind of the tail end of the Street and Smiths era. So now everything is so instant, and I see it all the time. I see kids posting what their offers are. Like, I just got offered by this college, just got offered by this college. And if I'm a college coach, I'm thinking, are you actually interested in our program, or are you just wanting to announce that you got an offer? And so, like,
Right,
it's such,
exactly.
yeah, and it's such a different world as far as people promoting themselves. So you're almost like your own business now. You're not necessarily just playing for the love. You're not really playing, to play basketball anymore. You're almost playing because it's like a business now. And I see it with a lot of kids. Like, they're not having as much fun. There's so much pressure on them to, go to a Division I school now, or get an NIL deal now, where they're just not having fun with it. And with AAU too, everything is about posting their highlights to social media, or it's all about, are you
Mhm.
playing for this NBA player elite, or whatever the case may be. And I think that there's a lot of you know fluent basketball that's missing today, because if, as an AAU, I run, I don't want to call it AAU, our high school competes in the AAU tournaments, but we don't really have an AAU program. But what I see is a lot of kids who might get challenged on their AAU team. And if it's too hard, they just go to a different AAU team and go play for another one. And so I don't think that there's enough teaching in AAU. I think the game of basketball is losing some of the beauty to it. You see a lot less sets being run, a lot less defense being played. And I think women's basketball is a little bit better about that. But, I think AAU, NIL, and social media has definitely poisoned the well a little bit, for sure.
And something, Zach, and my personal experience being a referee for 40 years and continuing, I find out that, just because you yell a lot, don't mean you're coaching. I think
Right.
there's a difference between coaching and teaching. And a lot of coaches go out there and yell and scream, and it might make it look like, I know you as a coach. When you tell a player, rebound or do this, they think that is coaching. You have to tell a player how to rebound, how and why, so they can have a complete understanding exactly what you are teaching, not coach, teaching your boy, girl, man, woman, how to play the game the right way. You can't just back out, yell, scream, because that may look like you're coaching, but and you know what? In my opinion, a lot of times that means you can't coach because you can't teach. What is your
Right.
take on that?
No, I mean, you're exactly right. Like, I mean, you can yell as loud as you want, but if it doesn't make sense or if it's not helpful, just because you're loud doesn't mean it's going to help, but and every player is different, right? Like, you can't just tell all 5 of your players the same exact way how to rebound against, certain players. Like, so there might be a 6'5" girl, or there might just be a 5'7"
Right.
girl that, is very quick or very fast or, really good
Mm-hmm.
at a swim move, things like that. And so it's like, how do you stop that specific player on the rebound? And that's kind of one of the things that I will try to say, okay, she's 6'3", you got to try something different. This girl's fast. You got to do this, you got to do that. So every player is different. So like, I think explaining them how to box out against different types of players or players in that moment is most helpful. But I mean, you're exactly right. You can't just like yell out, box out, and expect to get rebounds. That's just not how it works. It'd be great if that's how it worked. That's just not how it works. I think that's why you hear so many coaches yell, box out. It never works, right? So, no, you're totally
Because most
right.
time the players don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you have to. I mean, there's so much. There's not enough teaching in today's game, and you see it at all levels now. And I mean, look at college basketball. We just lost like 6 legendary coaches in a 2-year span. We lost Coach K, Roy Williams, Jim Boeheim,
Yes.
Jay Wright. I mean, the list goes on. And I mean, they all kind of say the same thing, how the game's changing, or they don't agree with the NIL or the transfer portal. And I think everybody can kind of sense that, the game's a little bit poisoned right now. And as somebody who loves basketball, it hurts to watch, it hurts to see that. So
it's kind of devastating because they're playing for the name on the back as opposed to the name on the front. And
right.
that to me is really a problem. And then you got the one and done. I'm talking about in the collegiate level, the one and done. How do you coach that? How do you landscape that? How do you, work your way around all that? That's a whole nother thing. But right now we're here to talk about you, and you've been humble. You played ball in college, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I
Well,
had
talk about that. I want stuff like talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, coming out of Northern Nevada, I played in a really special era of high school basketball. We had I don't know how much you know about Northern Nevada sports, but it's very rare to have guys go to like Division One or to the NBA from our area. But in my era, we had a guy named Luke Babbitt, Armand Johnson, who both played for the Portland Trailblazers, a guy named Oleg Chiz, who played at Duke, had Pete Newell's grandson, Pete, who I mentioned earlier, who helped me coach a little bit. We had Gabby Williams' brother, Amari Williams. I mean, we've had some really great players during my era. And it was difficult to kind of get recruited out of Northern Nevada because we only have two universities in the state. It's UNLV and Nevada, and there's not exactly a bunch of guys from other states coming to watch you play. So for me, I didn't have like a ton of offers or options. So I went but I was kind of poisoned in the head where I felt I have to go to a 4-year. I need to go to Division One. I need to do this. Like that's because I just thought that's what you're supposed to do. I didn't really have a coach or any guidance on, to tell me like, hey, just go to the best situation. Go like what makes sense for school. Go what makes sense for your living situation. Because if basketball doesn't go well, you're going to want A and B to go well, right? And so
Right.
I made the mistake of trying to go Division One. I went to Utah Valley, and I mean, there's a guy named Ronnie Price, Ryan Toulson, guys that were way better than me, and so I got there and realized I wasn't good enough really quick. So I left very early, didn't last long. Went the junior college route. Went to a school called Olympic College. It's a junior college in Washington, and I broke my ankle and the arch of my foot, so that I missed the whole season. Lost my scholarship, so I transferred to another school. Went to Edmonds College right after, which was not far away, and broke my ankle 2 or 3 more times right after that. So I think I only played in a total of 6 games in my college career. So, but what happened was it kind of set the table for coaching, and one of my coaches played in the NBA, won a national championship with Michigan. So I got to kind of sit on the bench, learn from him a lot, learn some good things, and kind of applied that to coaching. But I mean, yeah, after you break your ankle so many times, I just kind of said, you know what, this ain't it. I better try something else. This isn't working out. So yeah, I mean, I didn't have a stellar college career by any means, but it was a blessing in disguise because it led me to coaching, and I enjoy that way more, giving back and kind of helping kids through this college process, because a lot of people don't know how recruiting works, and being through that and making the mistakes I made, I'm kind of able to help them out through that.
Zach, one thing too, now you being a head coach, what else do you do for your players besides teaching and coaching? Because they're at a very impressionable age. And what, I guess, I don't know, maybe, what do you want, what message do you want to send to your players as far as maybe basketball after life? Or are there any words of wisdom you give your players besides basketball?
Yeah, and it kind of comes back to a quote that I said earlier is don't let basketball use you, use the basketball. Like that's something that I do preach to them, and applying the lessons we learn from basketball to everyday life, because being on a team, like you take teamwork into anything that you do in life, right? Whether it's a relationship or your job or friendships, whatever it is, like you have to apply teamwork everywhere that you go, And so I think what's beautiful about women's basketball too is that they're so team oriented, like they all want to be a part of a team and be a part of something special, and they're very receptive of everything that you kind of preach and do. And so that's one of the things that we really do preach is to, at the end of the day, basketball is a game, it's a fun sport. Like, and one of the things I always tell them is, because they're really hard on themselves, they're really hard if they lose a game, or they're really hard if they feel like they let me down or something. And I always say, remember why you played basketball. Remember why you picked up a basketball. Like when you first picked up a basketball, It wasn't to win a state championship. It wasn't to win this game tonight. It wasn't to impress me. Like you picked up a basketball because you love it. You picked up a basketball because you wanted to meet great friends, make great friends out of this, make great connections and do something fun. And so I think it kind of takes a lot of stress and pressure off them once we kind of remind them of those things. But at the end of the day, you play basketball because you love it. You play basketball because it's fun. And I think that comes back to what we were talking about earlier with, AU and, the NIL. It's these kids don't really look like they're having fun out there sometimes. I think there's so much pressure on them with everything going on that you kind of lose sight of why you play basketball. You know what I mean?
And Zach, you are absolutely correct. And now, what is your take on the parents? And what I mean by that, me being a referee, I noticed that not everyone, but a lot of parents are living their life through their kids, and they put undue pressure on their kids.
Yeah.
And what is that? How does that affect you as being a coach, dealing with parents?
I've been blessed, honestly. Like the parents I've had have been extremely supportive and great, and I think a lot of it too is, like I said earlier, we started from the bottom. Like people were hitting me up every night. They want to schedule their senior night against us because they thought it'd be an easy win, right? So like
Wow.
that's where we started. So like I think, I've been blessed in the situation I'm in where we kind of turned it around quickly. And so like I don't really get the complaints, or I don't really get, too many parents in my ear, being negative, because I think they see how much we put into it and they see results, right? And I think it's a lot better when you start winning, obviously. But
Right.
I mean, we went from having zero parents at our games to them traveling everywhere. So like for me, I've been blessed, but I have
Wow.
seen other teams that, that do deal with parents that maybe overstep or just don't allow their kids to be kids, or you see it all the time in AAU in the stands where they're yelling at referees. And
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
you as a ref, I know this hits home to you, but like I can't even imagine how hard it is to make every single correct call at the speed of the game that it goes at. And like to me, it's like, you know what? If I'm not refing, I'm not going to complain much. Like, of course, I'm going to question some things and like
Of
ask,
course.
but I always do it with respect as a coach, like because I respect the hell out of refs. You know what I mean? But I mean, some of these parents, they don't understand that not every kid is going to go Division 1. Not every kid is going to go pro. Like the basketball world is a very big world, and it's kind of like what we said earlier. Everything has to go perfect if you're going to make it to the pros. Everything has to go dang near perfect to go Division 1. Like it's a very, very small percentage that gets to do that, And I think what parents need to do is to allow their kids to be kids and allow them to have fun with the game. And I saw something really interesting. I forget who this was, but a coach blindfolded a kid and put them at center court and instructed the parents to give this kid directions on how to make a layup blindfolded. And what happened was you had some parents say, go right, go right, go right. Some parents are saying, go left, go left, go left. You had some parents saying, shoot it when they weren't even close. And what happened was the kid wasn't even close to the basket because he's hearing all these different things. And so finally, the coach kind of said, stop. Like, this is why you need to sit in the stands and be parents and not talk and allow your kid to listen to the coach. And I thought that was such a great example and a great way of doing it because it's so spot on. You have coaches saying, hey, run this offense. You have parents in the stands saying, run out the clock. You have some parents saying, shoot it. And it's usually their kid that they want to shoot it, or one parent saying, pass. There's so much miscommunication out there. And it's really, parents do need to allow coaches to coach and players to play and refs to ref.
And something, you are so right. I did see that video, and it definitely resonated with me because that's exactly what happens in a lot of cases as well. Now, Zach, is there anything that maybe I didn't ask, or anything that you want to convey to the viewers? Because when I have my guests, what I always like them to do is make an impact, and you obviously have made an impact on what all the stories that you've already told and expressed. But is there anything maybe that you wanted to convey to the viewers, and maybe you can make an impact on them, and then we'll talk about how they can get in touch with you and etc.
Yeah, no, I mean, you've asked pretty much every question. I mean, it's such a joy to be on your show. I mean, what an honor. I appreciate you so much. And I think if there's anything that I would want to say, I just want to thank some of your former guests that I've been blessed to be in contact with and have on my show, like Ashley Orndorff.
Yes.
You know, she played with my sister, one of the most amazing basketball players I've ever seen up close. And for her to share her story, it's helped so many people out there. And the clinic she's done, she's meant a lot to me, my basketball team, and you know, all those girls. So I want to thank her, and also Dana Smith, who you had on. He got me kind of in contact with Paul McKeskey to come up and do a clinic, and him and you know Dana and Paul were great. They've been great to our girls and our program, so they mean a lot to me. And you know, and also I just want to thank you for you know thinking to have me on the show and you know promoting our show all the time. And it's just really special to see what you're doing, because I think that we're both in it for the same reasons, which is to give back, educate, you know, the youth, and you know really kind of give an idea of what basketball was and how it should be, because it's definitely going in a little bit of a sour direction, I feel like. So
And Zach, you are so right. And again, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving me the opportunity back in the day. And I'll never forget that. And is that anything I can do, you have an open platform to come on my show anytime, anywhere, any place. You know, I owe a debt of gratitude to you and Eric for giving me the opportunity. It's something I will never forget. And again, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on my show. And you are a very special person. And I hope the viewers get to see your show. Let them know how they can watch you or your show. Promote your show so the viewers can know what I know.
yeah, no, I appreciate it. You know, we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Not My House Podcasts. You know, we're on Apple, Spotify, really any source for podcasts. And I know that you'll probably post a link to our podcast on this post for this episode. But yeah, I mean, we're pretty much anywhere. You'll see a big finger wag for Dikembe Mutombo as our logo. But yeah, I mean, if you just want to hear great stories and great journeys from, you know, some great NBA players from the past and WNBA players and coaches, I mean, everybody's got an incredible story to tell. And I mean, I can just say I've never not learned from any of our guests, including you. I learned quite a bit from you. So your episode is one of our favorites too. You definitely gave us a lot of knowledge. So, but yeah, or you can email us at notmyhousepodcast@gmail.com if you want to get in touch with us or get more information on our podcast. We'll be happy to respond. So,
folks, let me tell you all something right now. Their podcast is one of the best. If you want to know about the history of the game, the players, you need to tune in and watch their podcast, Not in My House. It is the bomb. I'm letting y'all know. I watch it all the time, and I gain knowledge. I gain interest, and I want y'all to tune in, check them out, check out Eric, check out how they do their thing, and best believe they already have one of the best podcasts in the country, and who knows what's going to happen in the future. Again, Zach, thank you so much for coming on my show. You have an open platform. Thank you so much. Anything I can do, I got you.
Hey, likewise, my friend. You're welcome back anytime. So we'll make it happen at some point. So again, thank you. And you're gonna have to get Eric on here one day. He'll have some good stuff.
I got to get Eric. You better tell him he better come on next. Well,
yeah,
again, Zach, thank you so much for coming on my show. God bless.
Yep, thank you. God bless. Appreciate it.
Thank you as well. All right, folks. This is Sports Corner with the Conn Man, and I am the Conn Man. And I just had one of the best guests I've ever had. And folks, let me tell you something. He gave me the confidence and the opportunity to express myself, and I owe a debt of gratitude to him and Eric. And again, I want to thank them for coming on my show, and hopefully we'll have them back as well. So, folks, thank you for tuning into Sports Wave Network and Sports Corner with the Conn Man. And stay tuned. We're going to have some great guests coming on. And thank you guys for tuning in. God bless. Stay safe. God bless you, Eric. Zach.
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely. God bless you. Thank you.